just a reminder, we do have a closed session after this as well, so just FYI. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Engel to begin.
Yeah, there were two areas where I heard some questions, and I'm thankful to Ms. Sukla for sending one in advance to me regarding steering committee and a little more definition around that, which I think is totally understandable. And then also another question, kind of around the focus questions, and it came up as like guardrails and like how to keep people on track. And so I'll just go through this document that I shared.
Guardrail words.
Guardrails. I like guardrails. I'm in the National Guard, so guardrails are awesome.
What would you like it to put out?
Like I said last time, those are good introductory questions. I mean, to say guardrails, I mean, that means I have to stay within these. What are you limiting for? I mean, the whole world is out there. Why limit it?
And Ms.
If people can think of an unusual input area, why would you say, no, don't talk about that? That's too far out. There's no vision.
Ms. Tigerwell, we don't need any guardrails at the next board meeting to replace the squishies, just FYI.
So steering committee facilitates the gathering of information and analysis of information throughout the district's visioning process on behalf of the school board. Steering committee is a group of key school district and community representatives responsible for overseeing and guiding the district visioning process, ensuring it runs smoothly, collecting necessary input from stakeholders, and developing a draft of district vision for the school board to consider for approval. Steering committee provides direction and decision-making throughout the information gathering and analysis process, facilitates communication with diverse groups to gather input and feedback, sets timelines, manages events, ensures the planning process stays on track, organizes information, analyzes results, and identifies themes, and develops the products for presentation to the board. Steering committee should be made up of a representative group of individuals who are willing to execute the school board's district visioning process, who have the time to commit to such an endeavor on a weekly or bi-monthly basis, and who are willing to spend time in the analysis of large amounts of data. Steering committee will develop the final products for the school board to consider, knowing that the school board may adjust or modify the final district vision based on their broader understanding of the school district. The steering committee should consist of 7 to 12 members. There should be enough members to conduct the work and be representative, but not so many members that the process becomes inefficient. Recommendations for steering committee members come from different representative groups, a board member, school district administrators, teacher, support staff member, LPEF rep, parents, community members, and a facilitator that could be the superintendent, or it could be an independent individual if you want, a further sheen of distance. So that's the steering committee piece. Those are my thoughts around that. Just a group of people to do the heavy lifting on behalf of the school board. You're busy folks. You can let them gather the information, analyze it for you so that you can filter through what you think is most important and create a positive vision for the district moving forward.
Yeah, I guess that was my question, is like, are they gonna come up with this and then this is what we're going with? But you answered it, so, I mean, obviously, I have no problem with public input and then us having the final say.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, it's no good if the board doesn't approve it, right? Like I trust that the community will come up with the things that are on your mind because you're in the community and you're hearing those things. And this process, I think, will validate the school board's direction and your processes as we move forward.
I think part of the rub with the FAC process was it seemed like quite a few people felt like they were tasked with picking the plan forward. And then when we looked at the results and ultimately decided on a different path, it felt to some that we rejected what they said we should do. So with something like this, I think it's super important to move forward with a clear expectation of that group's purview, because in my mind, and just wanting to look at this with all of you, but in my mind, it seems like this group would make a recommendation to the board, would inform our process of continuing this work and ultimately deciding what we want to do, but wouldn't be the deciders of the path forward. Is that what you're saying or not? Because
What I imagine the steering committee do would they wouldn't be a decider in this process. They would just be like, here it is.
here's a synthesis of
Here's
what we
here's
learned.
all the stuff. Here were the 4 big categories that came out. a vision statement could be generated around facilities, about high-quality staff, about student achievement, about, community engagement. Here were some unique things that kind of filtered through that you should be aware of. There was strong concern for facilities, but mostly at the secondary level, right? Whatever it could be. And so then the board can use that information to generate, kind of pillars or statements. I don't know if Dan can pull up Sun Prairie's strategic plan, but they have some good, with a strategic framework in the school district. If you put in, strategic framework in your search bar there.
I cannot read that.
There it is. I'm gonna scroll down past this first group of pieces. Yeah, right there. So they've got a vision, they've got a mission, and then they've got this kind of overarching commitment that kind of runs through everything, called our commitment to equity and excellence through continuous improvement. I take issue with their color scheme, but they love it. The three pillars are a culture of educational excellence, a culture of engagement and inclusion, and a culture of operational excellence. And then they kind of get into some more specific things, student experiences goal, student learning environment goal. Those goals I know were generated by the school board themselves. But the student experiences and student learning environment, those came out as sub-themes as a part of that educational excellence. And so it was their steering committee's job to gather all this information, to create enough context and information so that the school board could really hone in on goals and validate the community's interest in these pillars and these areas. In here, it feels comprehensive, but there's a lot of things missing that in another school district might be of importance, but in Sun Prairie is not. And so, that's the sort of thing I'm looking forward to generating, is this kind of overarching pathway for how to proceed, and then the school board narrowing on some more specific things, and then that's our mission as a school district administration, is to fulfill those goals that the school board has. And so we'll develop action plans and steps, and maybe it's reflected in our policies as we move forward and in other ways.
And that was my thinking, is that this visioning process could lead to changes in our results, could change our operational expectations language, so those indicators could potentially be driven by what we create as the visioning, through this visioning process, excuse me.
I feel like the vision of the outcome statement in the top right box doesn't, at least in my mind, doesn't super match what you just described. Because to me, when I read this, I think like this community group is going to present something to us, and
We're gonna put our stamp on
it doesn't feel like the language lends to the, you don't,
I never read it that way.
okay.
And maybe I didn't understand folks' concerns about the nature of the steering committee, but my sense of this has been my experience with other steering committees, that this is a group of people we're asking to just do some work for us, gathering, we're asking them to find out, what does the community say we want the future of education to look like? They tell us that, we make it pretty with a better color scheme than Sun Prairie did, and decide how does that translate to actionable, measurable goals. That's our work.
I have
Am
the
I
same,
yeah.
No, I agree with you. I just don't think this describes that.
it. It doesn't
Oh,
say it.
that's fair, and I want to be really clear. I think what's important is not guardrails. It's a goal,
Yeah.
and a clear relationship between us and them. Like, because I think your concern about the FAC is well founded.
I just want to jump in. I saw Mr. Albert's trying to jump in here.
Yeah,
so-
no, I agree completely with you. Being on the facility advisory committee, I think if we were given like, this is what you guys are here to do, we kind of found out, 3 or 4 meetings in, we were like, okay, hold on a second, we're here to do this. So like being clear and communicating what they're there to do is really important.
Yes.
Because if we have them report on this and then we decide to take some things out of it and then they're not happy with it, that can lead kind of what happened with the FAC, right? It started with 30, it was 15 because people started losing interest because of the process. So as long as we're communicating that process from the very beginning, I mean,
And
That's a
I
huge
would say that
recommendation.
we don't need to go through the rigmarole of a steering committee either. You can just say, hey, Aaron, gather all this information for us, create a synthesis of it, analyze it a little bit so that we can make good sense of it. The reason I wanted to involve a steering committee was to create different perspectives, a broader involvement, so it's not Aaron's plan he cooked up in his office to present to the school board who's micromanaging their will, right? Like, I don't want that perception. And so having a steering
Or
committee.
reality.
Or reality that has
Hopefully.
different perspectives and different interests, helps synthesize that data and analyze it, in different ways. I might see one thing, a parent might see another, a teacher might see it in a different way. The board rep might say like, hey, this isn't really in alignment with everything we've done for 10 years, so let's readjust. So I think having those different perspectives in that analysis process is particularly useful. I mean, setting up focus groups, surveys, interviews, and open houses, that's gonna be Kelly and I, like, making a lot of appointments and setting things up, and that's our job. The steering committee comes together in that analysis point. You all don't want to spend 10 hours looking at data, sifting through focus groups and survey data. One of you might, and I hope you join our steering committee. But the purpose is to create a strong process that the community feels validated in what comes before the board. And that vision of the outcome isn't about the steering committee specifically. It's like the broader thing. Our community develops this, our board endorses it, and it allows us to have a guiding light as we move forward.
Yeah, and I have 100 thoughts at the same time, sorry here. I don't think that the final product that the board, that the steering committee would give us looks like the Sun Prairie. They're not giving us the pillars, they're not even giving us the language, right? They're giving us the themes, because when you go out to the community as we heard, in any number of forums, in any number of different ways, and you ask big questions about what's important in education, you're gonna get a million discrete little moments, right, about things that are like their experience at building X, right, that they would like to see improved or changed or continued or expanded upon, right? And the job of the steering committee is to draw out of these hundreds and maybe thousands of discrete moments that are not going to be these broad overarching visions, right, to draw out themes and to say, hey, as we, just like we do with, asking the community, what should we do with this property? What's important to you, right, in the Washburn neighborhood, right? Is it green infrastructure? Is it parking? Is it mixed-use housing, right? They're going to come back with some priorities, ideally, and we're going to take those priorities and make them measurable and actionable.
I think what might be helpful for the board is just an awareness, if we've spoken more than once, maybe looking around the table to see if there's others who have not spoken, because I see Ms. Sukla's hand, I see Mr. Neumeister's hand, I see Mr. Manka's hand, so if we could just limit ourselves also and just being respectful of our other board members. So Ms. Sukla and Mr. Neumeister, and then Mr. Manka.
I thought their hands were up before mine. My questions are, how many meetings for the steering committee and who selects them?
Meet as often as necessary to accomplish the business. I imagined, potentially weekly or bi-weekly, every 2 weeks, in order to accomplish the tasks necessary. Initially, some of it could be done by email. If we've got some draft survey questions, we send it out. Hey, does this look good? We'll bring it to the board at the next meeting just so that they can get a final stamp of approval on the survey. And then we'll send it out. And then, at the focus groups, we'll have some steering committee members who attend those and plan those, so it'll be, iterative, maybe every 2 weeks we're meeting just to kind of go through this process throughout December through March. Maybe for the analysis piece, it's a little more intensive for a period of time. It might be a 3-hour meeting one of those nights as opposed to half-hour Zoom call, and so it'll kind of be dependent on the membership as well. Who picks the steering committee members? I'm always open to suggestions for people you think could represent us well, or people you want to curse to more meetings. When it comes to teacher representatives, I always like to ask LEA, our union, to select somebody so that they feel involved and their voice is heard. Same thing with our support staff, members. I like to ask the representative groups there, hey, do you have somebody who'd want to spend a little time on this thing? We've got amazing people in our buildings who could help. District-wide parents, that's a committee that we have that could be, but it could be any parent, who has kids in our buildings that has that unique perspective. And if you all have recommendations for these folks, if we can come up with 7 to 12 people and maybe a slightly longer list as people say no, that would be great.
More specifically, who picks the board members?
If the committee wants a board member, you can certainly trust me to pick, but, I expect all of you to find a tribute and send them to this committee.
I nominate Scott.
Seconded.
Mr.
I know it's a large commitment for folks, so, it's tough.
Mr. Newmeister?
Thank you. First off, I agree with Dr. Engel. We want it to be seen as a community engagement where they're helping us choose this, which I think is very smart, especially after the beating you took after the first referendum failure. So
I'm trying to learn my lesson.
yeah, so I agree with you 100% there, and I think it also allows us the opportunity to address some of the linkages questions. Maybe we can add them a little, like one of them at Logan Middle was, what does a graduate from La Crosse High School look like? What's the perfect maybe we get the input of that steering committee on that as well. I think to Mr. Begneski's deal, why put a guardrail on there, his favorite word, when these people can open it up and get real creative. And I think that's an exciting part about it. I think we'll learn a lot of things that we didn't anticipate learning.
Absolutely.
Mr. Minko?
Yeah, the one thing for the past meetings that's really been holding me away from really, I think, is just understanding how a steering committee works is just by the fact that it seemed to be separate from the board and not exactly working hand in hand, where we're both working from the same output of mind.
Yeah, my hope is that, I'm presenting this, it's my job to work on behalf of the board. Right? I've gone to lots of training, I've read lots of books, I've taken graduate level classes on strategic planning, so it's my job to synthesize this stuff for you, but at the end of the day, this is your district visioning process. Whatever the steering committee you want to be, it's yours. I'm here to facilitate that for the school board. My job is to work for you. And so in making this happen, it's my goal just to create something to respond to, something to react to, so that you don't have to do all that heavy lifting. And it would be the same for a steering committee. They work for the school board in developing this district vision. And so whatever you want them to bring to whatever level of refinement or detail, you might get this committee together and say, man, you guys are really smart. Why don't you just come up with some goals for us too, and we'll see if we like those. Who knows? This is your group to help drive your process that I think will really benefit our school district in the long term.
Are you done?
You didn't seem to.
You seem like you were saying
I
no.
wanted to ask a question. I feel like most of it's kind of going around the similar language what we've all have asked questions for. So I'm trying to take more of an active ear. I don't think I really have a question that hasn't already been asked yet.
It sounds like you have a concern about the relationship, though. Am I misunderstanding? Like if we're not working hand in hand with the group, as you said,
And what I'm seeing is more, it's not exactly like a closed section where the board members are just saying, okay, here's your job, come back to us once you're done. They come back to us like, oh, well, we like it or we don't like it. And I'm seeing it more of an open process here now where
yeah, and I think
I have
it's
more,
also,
I have more
sorry.
procedural questions more than is. I
Sure.
don't think,
I think it's important to keep in mind that the nature of the ask is also really quantitatively and qualitatively different than the FAC.
right.
Right, we're asking for what are people talking about in a community that they think is valuable in public education? How do we make sense of that in a way that either matches with our existing value statements or promotes some change in those statements.
Come up with a compromise.
Yeah, exactly. It's a different kind of material that we're asking for.
Correct.
And I think, if people have probably accused the board of, railroading the community around an idea before, and so having a community-based group also gives the board some insulation. Hey, we turned this over to a group of representative folks. They analyzed it for us, and they gave us a lot of great feedback, and we took that and made something great. But it's rooted in our community's voice.
I think another thing to consider is no matter what idea we come up with, there will always be detractors. There will always be people who will not be happy about the process, but I think that should not stop us from trying to find the best process forward to try to find the best solution forward. But also recognizing that no matter what decision we do, there will always be a select few who may not be happy with how we decided this to occur. I know there was questions about the representation on the Facility Advisory Committee, for example. So I think we just need to, as a board, decide what is it that we want to do, how do we want to accomplish it, and continue forward as best we can to get the best solution.
We just want to minimize the gap between the community and us.
Absolutely.
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 I'm sorry, I'm
Yeah.
talking 3 times.
That's all right.
I'm making up for
That's,
all
there's a workshop.
6 months. With that being said, though, you kind of did take the Facility Advisory Committee's recommendation and you tweaked it. And you tweaked it to a positive, right? What just happened.
Yep.
So it's the same process in theory.
Absolutely. Yeah. Mr. Clark?
So
Just keep the guardrails on.
can board members attend any of these meetings to just listen? I assume it'll be like the FAC where we can only listen and not provide input because we don't want to skew the work of the committee. Is that the
I see
intent?
this as much more open and free-flowing than that process. That was a much more regimented process. This is just a group of people trying to do the work of collecting some data and analyzing it. Anybody would be welcome to attend. I wouldn't wish that on anyone necessarily because it's a lot of tedium and all right, our focus groups are coming up. We need facilitator for 3 different tables. Kelly's going to take care of the centerpieces and the coffee. Who can make it? All right, here's the information we got from the focus groups. We scanned all the notes in. Kelly typed them up. We dumped it into ChatGPT just to get an idea of the results. Are you seeing anything? What really struck out to you? And then we'll get the results back from the survey. We'll put that in Qualtrics and use that to kind of analyze some of those results. Here's the percentage of these things. Do we need a follow-up survey, do you think? It'd be very procedural and just administrative and executing, gathering the data.
Will the board be aware of when those focus groups are? I mean, I think for us to go in here firsthand, some of the input is valuable. I'm trying to limit
Absolutely.
I'm trying to limit my input here so that I'm not accused of not being supportive of staff. So I'm just trying to stay limited on what my questions are.
No, I think, the survey will be very public. The focus groups will be, we'll be inviting lots of people in. School board members want to be involved in that process. They're more than welcome to be so to the extent that they want to be.
I have a question. What would it look like to advertise these open positions and allow interested folks to just fill out a simple form that shares if they have kids in the district, if so, where do they go, where do they live, what skill sets could they bring to the table, things like that that could help us, show that we aren't handpicking the people. I mean, we could encourage people we think would be good to fill out the form, right? But then based on people's responses, we could make sure that we have a good representation of skill sets and where people live and all sorts of things. I don't know, just a thought.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely could.
I think that's great.
You have the email addresses of every parent, student in the Crosse.
More or less, yeah.
Yep, every 5th one or 8th one or.
Yeah, I mean, we could easily send an email to all of our parents and, hey, if you're interested in participating in this committee, we're going to meet every other week on Wednesdays at 4:30. Zoom or in person will be available depending on your preference. Our tasks will be to X, Y, and Z. We intend to culminate our work in April, and so there would be an opportunity to solicit interest that way for sure. Because we intend to involve community members, it's got to be accessible. So
A retired educator would be probably nice to have on there too, or something
I know
like
a guy.
that.
yeah, it could be beneficial, absolutely. Lot of different ways it could be approached. You might want somebody who's like totally foreign to education, you know, a community member, like just a business member, somebody who works at Train or who has an interest at Quick Trip. You know, there might be City Brewery, yeah, a variety of different perspectives to bring to that.
And I think that allows our community to decide. You know, there might be people we have not thought of. This gives us a broader array of individuals who might be interested to come forward and give us an even more broad perspective than we might have had without something like that. And as an idea, I mean, we could announce it through the news, through the media, social media as well. We could, you know, invite people maybe to an informational session where we're talking about some of those details for people who are not parents, who may not get the information, where they can gather that information, decide for themselves if they want to apply. I really like the idea of an application process if it makes sense. If it makes sense.
Yeah,
Right.
and I just want to push on like one thing in what you said. I like in principle, I like the idea of self-selection. I always want people who are interested in doing something to be the ones that come and invest their time in doing it. But I think in terms of the ability of that process to get us to something like a representative group is limited.
Well, I think we're never going to have a
we're never
representative.
going to have
Exactly.
a truly representative
No.
group, but in particular, I think relying only on self-selection is going to disadvantage people who are working multiple positions, single parents, individuals whose input we desperately need,
Yep.
right? Who are not, you know, non-English speakers, right? We have
Yeah.
a significant population of parents, especially who are non-English speakers,
Correct.
right? How do we, because
Well, this is not the steering committee is not the only place their voice will be heard.
Correct.
absolutely,
Their perspective
again,
will
multiple
filter
measures,
information.
right?
Yes.
Yeah, always. Yeah.
And I think that it falls on us to find a way to have people who may not speak English to be part of the process, no matter what part they're in, right? So I think that's where we would make sure our administrators are finding ways to ensure that we are representative and inclusive of all.
Could I make another quick, I know I've now spoke 3 times, so.
Workshop.
That's
I'm
okay.
way
It's a
over
workshop.
So-
This is a little
Is there
bit
a
more
free-time rule
free-flowing.
now?
Well, I don't know,
Picked up.
but
City
I
council.
tend to say stuff wrong, so. If I could suggest, I think as we get this steering committee going, it would be nice to have them meet in different areas. So if we invite the public, like north side one time, south side the other, you know, in the middle, have them at least towards the end so they can get input from others. I think that might be beneficial to them, kind of like the charrettes we did for the city and stuff.
No, and I definitely think that comes into the gathering information piece, where we have our focus groups, our open houses, where we're soliciting information. You know, that will happen all over the city, trying to make it as accessible as possible. Absolutely.
I'm just concerned that at the end, whatever the product is, we're going to be told this is what the community came up with, and if we have other thoughts, then we're told, then you're going against the community. And I think breaking this group off away from the board could create that opportunity, and that's my concern. And again, I'm trying to be very careful what questions I ask, because I don't want any false accusations.
But if I have a commitment towards one thing, and we go through a robust process, and the community comes up with a different thing, isn't that incumbent on me to reflect a little bit? That maybe I'm not aligned?
I'm talking about the board. I'm just one board member.
Right, but I think we're all individual board members who are going to have that experience. We're like, oh, I didn't expect that to be as important to people. It's less important to me, but here I have 85% of respondents, you know, ranking it number 1 or something, right? I think we're all going to have those moments of forced reflection where, like, we have to examine our perspective as only one among, you know, many in the community, right? Related to our work history, our family history, our socioeconomic status, right? The circles we travel in. We can't, any of us as individuals, account for every perspective in the community. And the goal is to try to have as many of those at the table. We can find commonalities, common themes from those. So I want to make sure I'm understanding your concern correctly too, that the way I heard it was sort of what I said up front, that if the community says one thing and I think another, and we're going to do it my way, then I'm going to be accused of not listening to the community. But if that's the situation, I am in fact not listening to the community. Am I making sense? I don't know if I'm being accurate either, so.
Now, I
Let Ms. Sukla.
I don't think that's exactly what I'm saying, but
Okay.
I'm struggling with sharing my thoughts at this table and it's not being used against me individually, so I'm just struggling with this conversation.
Mr. Magneski?
Well, going back to your point there, I mean, I'd say that was a point of discussion then. I mean, if you feel one way and three people feel differently, then I think that it's on you to say, okay, why do you think that way?
Yeah.
And I personally, probably getting too deep here, but I don't feel that happens enough at this table. I mean, I think there's too often that somebody says something and it just falls flat. Now, is that, I'm supposed to take that as, that's negative? Well, no, a good educational experience would say there's dialogue here. Come on, let's talk about it. Why do you think that way? Why do you feel that way? And we both gain from the process.
Yeah.
If you just sit on your hands, what the heck? Nobody gained on that one.
Yeah.
And I've certainly had experiences where what I thought would be the most important thing to a group of people did not end up being the case. You know, whether it was a school initiative or a benefit that I thought might be important. I remember during the, when we had the ESSER funds, the extra money for ARPA funds, right, like for the COVID relief. And we met with our employee groups to find out what are the things you want us to focus on with this additional money. Because I got lots of ideas and our administrators have lots of ideas. And a lot of us were in alignment, but there were some things that I thought, surely you would want this. And they said, nah, we don't. And so we had to make a conscious decision then, all right, our staff doesn't want this even though we think it would be good for them. And so as opposed to like doing the paternalistic thing, and like we adjusted course and listened to the people that were there. I've had that with students before too, where I was a principal and you know, I surveyed my students and they're like, yeah, I don't know about that. I even though we think it would be good and it's not harmful either way, I was like, well, I'm going to do what the students want to do in my classroom, you know, or in my building because their voice matters to me, and it's a risk and it's humbling in some cases, you know, to give up on something that you thought would be appreciated. It happens every year when we talk with our unit and meet and confer. And like, I know that you would really want this thing. This last year, I think we had a conversation around personal days and having an extra personal day. And what the union said was like, that's fine, but we'd rather have compensation in dollars. And to me, like the mental health and the value of a personal day was greater than, you know, $400 or $500. But for an employee who's got a limited budget, like, no, actually the money's really valuable right now given the economy. You know, and so we listened to our teachers and we went with what they said as opposed to what we thought that larger benefit would be. And so I know those are tough moments.
I think, like, the fact that there will be a board member there and an administrator will help prevent the group from congealing around certain themes that really aren't within our scope of power. You know what I mean? So like if, did that make sense?
You mean like
Yeah.
homelessness? Like how are the schools
Yeah,
going to solve
like if
homelessness?
the themes start coming up where people really want to talk about certain things that we really can't address or we don't have the finances for it, then we can explain that rather than allow that to emerge as the theme of month's work. You know what I mean?
And if homelessness, right, like that's not a school district, like that's not a lever that we deal with the impacts of it, but we can't solve that problem as a school district. There's an opportunity to reframe that within a broader sense, you know, like we have a commitment to serving all kids no matter where they come from.
Yes.
You know, and so that would be an opportunity for the board to take, you know, the steering committee was like, hey, this theme came out, we're really concerned about kids who are experiencing homelessness. Some of the people in our community wanted us to solve it. You know, like, we know that's not a thing we can do, school board, this is a theme. It kind of falls under this grouping of other things we also heard. They're really concerned about our English learners. They're concerned about recent immigrants. They're concerned about students with special needs. And so maybe a pillar is a culture of educating all. We're going to educate all students regardless. And some of our goals might be around, special populations of students who need additional support. And it could be a goal around homelessness specifically. We're going to support homelessness, students experiencing homelessness to the best extent we can by X, Y, and Z.
I think to Deb's point, though, I think it's one of my concerns as well is, as long as we make it known right from the start, as we talked at the beginning of all this, that this is our only recommendations. They may not all be taken. We have our own board that'll make the final decisions. Ultimately, when I was voted in, and I not only do what's best for the students, but I do what's best for the taxpayers, and I'm not going to sit here and be quiet and ignore things because people don't like what I have to say. So I'm just saying that up front. And I know that you don't always agree with me, everyone, but I have every right to be heard. So I think as we move forward, especially with this, we just need to make what our ideas are clear and concise to the steering committee, because I think it's imperative for them to understand while we want their input, we make the final decision.
Totally.
I would just even say, are we even asking them for recommendations, or are we asking them for information?
I think that's a
I
good
don't
point,
think it's-
because
Right.
it's easy to see the parallels between this and the.
Well, sorry, go.
Oh, I think we keep comparing this to the facility advisory committee, which I think there are comparisons.
Sure,
But
yeah.
to your point, the product in the end will be different, and I think that's what we need to understand better. I
Yeah.
think to your point, it'll be ideas, like these are the themes and not
Right.
hard-pressed recommendations that we're being asked to carry forward.
Right, when I see theme analysis in organization, I see like, what were the things that came up the most, right? So like, if, as you're writing your vision, I guess recommendation does work as a word here, but it's, again, it is qualitatively different than the FAC. The recommendation is, the community is focused on X, Y, and Z. I recommend you consider that in your vision statement. It's like,
And I think to Mr. Neumeister's point, everybody has a right to be heard, and I think that, we have had some robust conversations, but in the end, as we've said from the beginning, decisions are made by the entire board, not by individual board members. And so, though we may disagree, in the end, the board makes a vote, and that's the decision that's made. And that's what we go with.
I threw a little bit in there on focus questions as well. The goal there was just kind of prompt thinking, and those are examples of questions, not the end-all be-all. There's lots of other types of questions. I'm sure when our steering committee gets together, they'll have other ways to approach that, to kind of really prompt people to think both about their current state, like what's going on right now, but also what's the future look like. And, you have to reckon with the present in order to think about the future. And so 2 strands of questioning, like, think about your current situation. In 5 years, if we were the best school district in the state, what would the headline read? And then getting people excited about that without guardrails. It could be anywhere, no danger involved. So I think there's an opportunity to just use different types of questioning. These are just simple examples to kind of portray that. One thing I did throw in there is something about what do our students need to be, know, and do to be ready for life. I think it gets to that Lincoln question at the linkage. Like, what do we want our kids to walk out of the school district, being able to do? Hopefully run for an elected position, right? As some of our students have been able to do. Serve on school boards, as others of our students our former students are doing, 3 of them at least, 4. So 5. Man, it's never ending. So
You're surrounded by your own product.
reap what you've sown.
yes,
Add one more from your last district.
yes, exactly. Yes, another product of a great school district. So I think there's an opportunity to get what's sometimes called a portrait of a graduate. It's just like, and I think it help inform our results policies. When we talk about academic achievement or citizenship, listening to our community about what that means to them could be really valuable. And maybe it doesn't change anything, but maybe the board sees something and there's like, man, we really didn't prioritize that in the past, but we're feeling as a school board like this is important. We want to reflect that in our policies maybe.
It's a learning experience.
I was just thinking, this is a little more nuts and bolts comment. When we're doing focus groups and things, having, not asking all of the questions every single time, having different kinds of questions that are like, this is a night that's focused on, what do you want a graduate of La Crosse Public Schools to look, sound, feel, be, do like, right? And have that be the focus of an evening or a survey or what have you. What do you want our facilities to look like when you attend a concert, when you go to a football game? What do you want it to feel like to visit the school district of La Crosse? I think breaking out some of those will change the nature of the feedback that we get as well, potentially in a really creative and positive way.
I like that.
And some of the focus groups could also be actively going to our booster groups, people that are already agitating for the school district and excited and involved, so reaching out specifically to groups while also having open mic nights, come on in.
Even in neighborhood meetings.
Neighborhood meetings, exactly. Lots of different ways we could tackle that.
So where do we go from here?
Looking for recommendations for steering committee folks, either individuals or general composition. Is this general composition appropriate? A little bit of staff, a little bit more community, and then we can certainly get a public process available. I can also, through email or phone call or text message, solicit any particular names you have that might be good folks that I can reach out to. I can give an update by email before, winter break. Hey, here's some names that I've received. We've got this open process out. It closes, second week in January or something. We're going to solicit names from that group. We can, in the meantime, start creating a structure around some of this information gathering and let that committee, once they convene, really refine it.
I'd try to include, probably on your radar, but the diversity of the group.
Totally.
Yeah.
Would it be, I think it's important to have a strong facilitator. I think
Yes.
you're gonna have, but I think that Dr. Sprague brings up a good point too. If we break it up into sessions over one thing, what does, a graduate look like or whatever on one system set, or one day, I should say, that'll help keep it on track that way. But I also think it'd be a good thing to have a few just open sessions as well, so people can bring up, items, that haven't been brought up. But I think that would really help keep it on track.
I wonder also if having sessions focused on a theme or an idea like that would encourage more people. It's like, well, I have a lot to say about the buildings, but I don't know about classroom instruction,
Yeah.
right? I care about it, but somebody else can talk about that. That might encourage more people to feel like they have something to contribute, actually.
Would we want to include a member from, I don't know what you would call the group, a strategic partner, whether it be city or county government or from one of the youth serving organizations or somebody?
Yeah, Boys and Girls Club.
Certainly could.
I don't know, would there be, do you see an advantage to that, or, certainly including their voices in the gathering information portion, but.
Yeah, and there's an opportunity for focus groups around youth serving organizations or local government. I went to a strategic planning event with the YMCA, and it was clearly all people in roles like mine who work with the YMCA in a specific capacity, and so we had our own. But I know there were plenty of other strategic planning groups that look differently, members or employees or people that don't use the Y, so broad groups. So I think what I would be hopeful for is you could send me thoughts on names, and then I would also set up an open call, for the community that we would put out via email and social media, and we can let the media know that they don't do much. So we'll see how that goes. But, maybe in, once we get back from winter break, we'd have a kind of a list of folks And then we could have a workshop that may be pretty quick and just kind of refine that list, kind of narrow it down so that it feels representative and can do this work. And then we'd be able to move forward from there.
Go for it.
So then, I need to ask the board for a vote for us to go into closed session. The La Crosse Board of Education will consider a motion to move into closed session on Monday, December 9th, 2024, immediately following the Board of Education workshop. We will be in room 209 pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 19.85 sub 1 sub C for the purpose of considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, to wit, the superintendent's evaluation. Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Seconded.
Okay, moved by Dr. Sprague, seconded by Mr. Manka to approve moving into closed session. Could we get a roll call vote, please? Ms. Steigerwald.
Mr. Alberts?
Aye.
Mr. Bagneski?
Aye.
Ms. Berkedal? Aye. Mr. Manka?
Aye.
Mr. Newmeister?
Aye.
Dr. Sprague?
Aye.
Ms. Sukla?
Aye.
Dr. Jimenez?
Aye. We will move up to 209, so we'll just take a few minutes to move up there and then we'll get started.
Can I
If-
ask once again why we have to go up there?